Recently, not a day has gone by where I haven't seen YouTube pushing some new Fallout 76 is the worst game ever type of video in my recommended section. I'm not here to say that Fallout 76 is going to be the best game ever, right? I'm not going to be some, like, counterculture, totally change your mind sort of thing, right? Because a lot of the things people are saying about it is kind of true. Now, I did play the beta a little bit, so I kind of know what people are talking about. Some of the problems are perfectly reasonable problems to have. You know, the sound bugs, the bugs in general, things not hit detection not working right, frame rate drops, and things like that. Or, you know, my favorite complaint, Fallout 76 isn't a real Fallout game. I keep seeing people play this game and just not really come to the realization of what kind of game it is. They're judging the game as a Fallout game, and it's not a very good Fallout game. But if you look at it for what it is, it's actually pretty cool. See, Fallout 76 has a lot more in common with games like DayZ, H1Z1, Rust, Ark, and that whole perpetually in early access survival FPS MMO genre that we don't really see a whole lot of coming out anymore. That's the kind of game that Fallout 76 is, but with more structure. And when you start looking at the game like that, it starts to become pretty clear why they made some of the decisions they did in Fallout 76. So let me attempt to go over some of the main issues that people seem to have with the game and my take on it and why they're done this way. So people are upset that there's basically no NPCs in the game, right? Fallout games have always been very NPC and dialogue and choice heavy, and there just doesn't seem to be that in this game. But when you stop thinking of Fallout 76 as a Fallout game and think of it as a MMO FPS, it becomes kind of clear why they did that. Because the thing is, you can't really have world-changing stories in a multiplayer MMO kind of game. That's only something you can really have in a single-player game. And because of that, MMOs usually don't have much of a story, and NPCs just become people who stand around and give you quests, like, you know, something like World of Warcraft. So then you run into the problem of people being able to kill the NPCs that give you quests that you need to do certain things. And unless the world used some kind of weird instancing system, you couldn't really have NPCs that, you know, changed place and had their own little stories going on. So really the only way to do NPCs in a game like this is just have blank characters that stand around and say the same thing over and over and give you quests, or not have NPCs. And I think the decision to not have NPCs at all, or at least not have human NPCs, is actually the better choice in this instance, specifically because of the setting, because humans are supposed to be scarce, and instead of NPCs, what you get is a bunch of corpses who have little recordings on them, and you get to figure out what their story is based on those recordings. And that leads me into the second thing people have a problem with, the little recordings that are everywhere. And for the life of me, I don't understand why people hate these so much. These seem like a good idea. I find it to be a way more tolerable system to just pick up a little recording and keep on going and playing the game as you're listening to it than to have to stand in front of an NPC just doing nothing while they talk for 5 minutes. I don't know why people have a problem with it. It doesn't make sense to me. I think if it were any other game, people wouldn't care. We've seen this so many times in other games, and it's always been fine. One of the most nonsensical complaints I've seen is the leveling system being different and weird. Yeah, it's different and weird. It's an MMO. It's a different kind of game. I actually really like the leveling system in 76 because it gives you a huge amount of customization over your character. It's way more than in any other FPS MMO sort of game like this. Think about something like Destiny, where you have the choice between one of two things, basically, and that's your build. And something like Fallout 76, where you've got 49 points to spend in 7 different stats, and then a bunch of different cards that give you little perks in all of those different stats that you can switch out whenever you want. That's amazing. That's an amazing amount of customizability. I don't understand why people are bashing on this. This system looks awesome. I don't know, I'm just really excited about it, can you tell? Another complaint I see a lot is that the PvP is bad. Basically, if you try to gank a random person, they take severely reduced damage until they start shooting back, right? And I kind of understand where people are coming from when they say that this is a bad thing. If you're thinking about the game in terms of like a pure survival game like DayZ, then yeah, this would be a bad system. You should be able to just shoot people and kill them. But you have to understand that they're trying to juggle a bunch of different things here. Not only is it a survival FPS but it's also kind of an MMO. So they have to think about how this is going to affect the player base. Your main interactions in something like H1Z1 are with other players. Interactions with the zombies or whatever don't matter. But in Fallout 76, it's mostly a PvE game, and in a PvE-focused game, you can only really go about PvP in 3 different ways. Either you can have no PvP, which would be something like what Destiny did, where, yes, there are PvP matches that you can do separate, but you can't go out into the world and just, start shooting people and ganking other players, right? So you can have no PvP, which people would complain about, or you can have emphasized PvP, which is something like DayZ would have, where there's basically more of a benefit to just killing everyone around you than there is to actually work with anyone. But because Fallout 76 is a very PvE-focused game, that's just not really the direction they're going with it. So the only other option is de-emphasized PvP, where you can do it, but there's really no benefit to it, and you're going to be at a disadvantage as an attacker. And I promise you that in a game like this, de-emphasized PvP is the best way to go. If there is no PvP, people would complain because it makes sense to have PvP. It's kind of a survival game, right? If there was emphasized PvP, the game would be basically unplayable because you just have these people who would run around ganking you all the time, and it wouldn't be any fun, and most of the player base would just leave, right? The only way to do this is to have de-emphasized PvP, where there is PvP, so you satisfy the people who do want to gank, but you do so in a way that doesn't completely piss off most of the player base. And yeah, the whole thing could be tweaked a little bit. I'm not saying that it's perfect the way it is. I'm just saying the way that they're going with it seems like the best route. But please, don't take what I'm saying as this absolute fanboy defense of Fallout 76. I've barely played the game myself. I don't really know if I'm even going to like it. I'm just trying to explain how I see it and why I think they're doing the things they do, and why the game isn't necessarily a bad game, even though it's kind of not quite what people expect. And that's the main thing. It's not what people expect from a game with Fallout in the title. So don't think of it as a Fallout game, just think of it as a survival MMO FPS with a Fallout skin. And I think you'll see that a lot of the design decisions that they're making make more sense. Now, a lot of people are saying the game is going to be completely dead on arrival, but here's my prediction. I think the game's not going to have a very good first month, because I don't think I've ever played a multiplayer game that didn't have horrible problems in the first 2 weeks or so. For the first 2 weeks, people probably aren't even going to be able to connect to the game for more than an hour, right? It's going to be completely littered with bugs and exploits and hacks and all kinds of terrible shit. But what's going to determine if this game does well isn't its release. It's 6 months from now what they do about it. Because that's the case with every online game. The release is always going to be a complete mess. But what makes an online game succeed or fail is the continual support they have for it. Bethesda doesn't have a great track record with that, but we'll see when it comes to a game like this that is persistently online. Because if they want it to succeed at all, they have to give it continual support and continual updates and more content. So I don't think it's going to be dead on arrival. I think it's going to be a disaster for probably about the first month. And then after a couple of months, it's going to get gradually better and better, and the player base is going to build. So here's my conclusion. Don't buy Fallout 76 day one, but don't completely write it off. People are going to come out with reviews saying, oh, it's just as terrible as in the beta, and then completely forget about it and never look at it again. My suggestion is that you ignore it for the first month or two, and then take a look at what it becomes in a couple of months. And I think that Fallout 76 might actually surprise a lot of people with how good it could become. Like I said, I only played it a little, but the core gameplay is very good. It's very fun. It has a very good feedback loop. There's a lot of fun and replayability in just leveling up different characters because of the huge amount of character customization that you have. I will be buying it on day one because I buy DayZ and H1Z1 and all these games that are perpetually in early access. I don't expect the world of them, but eventually, sometimes they do turn out to be okay. So hopefully Fallout 76 is the same way. Anyway, thanks for watching. I'll see you later.